connection, and the bonds they form with others. We often grow up with the belief that friendships, once made, are meant to last a lifetime. After all, we hear about the best friends forever promises, and society teaches us that strong, lasting friendships are the mark of a successful life. But in reality, not all friendships are meant to withstand the test of time, and that's perfectly okay.
Good school.
In fact, some friendships are only meant to last for a season, providing us with exactly what we need in a particular moment of our lives. Think back to different phases of your life: childhood, adolescence, your early adulthood, your career years, and you'll likely realize that the people who walked alongside you during these times were there for a reason. Maybe they helped you navigate a difficult transition, supported you through a challenging situation, or simply provided companionship during a lonely period. These friendships served a purpose, even if that purpose wasn't meant to last forever. What we often fail to understand is that friendships, like all relationships, are fluid. They evolve with time, and just as we change and grow, so too do the dynamics of our friendships. It's easy to feel betrayed or heartbroken when a friendship fades away. But this doesn't always signify something negative or personal. It simply means that the friendship has run its course, and it's time to let go, not because anyone has done something wrong, but because both parties have outgrown the need for that particular connection. Sometimes we hold on to friendships long after they've naturally ended. We keep them out of a sense of obligation, fear of being alone, or a longing for the comfort that comes with familiarity. But clinging to friendships that no longer serve us can be emotionally draining. When a friendship begins to feel one-sided, when the connection is no longer fulfilling or supportive, it's a sign that the relationship may no longer be healthy. We all deserve friendships that nurture us, lift us up, and add value to our lives, not drain us or weigh us down. Recognizing when a friendship is no longer aligned with who you are becoming is a sign of maturity and self-respect. Not all friendships are meant to last forever because people change. You change. I change. Growth is a natural part of life. And as we grow, our needs, values, and priorities evolve. The person you were 5 years ago is not the same person you are today. And similarly, the person you were friends with back then might no longer align with the version of yourself you are now. This doesn't mean that the friendship was fake or unimportant. It simply means that it was time for you to move on. And that's okay. The beauty of life is in its constant change and evolution. And that includes the relationships we form. There are also times when a friendship ends because of a natural separation due to distance, geographical, emotional, or even intellectual. People move to different cities, start families, shift careers, or find new interests that take them on a different path. Just because someone is no longer in your immediate circle doesn't mean the friendship didn't matter or that it wasn't valuable. Life sometimes requires that we make new connections, seek new opportunities, or embark on new journeys. In these moments, we must learn to honor the memories of the friendships we've had without holding on too tightly, knowing that sometimes letting go is part of the process of moving forward. Then there are the friendships that end due to conflict, betrayal, or misunderstanding. These are some of the most painful types of friendship endings, especially when they come as a shock. We invest time, trust, and love into someone, and when that bond breaks, it can feel like a part of us is broken too. However, it's important to remember that not all breakups are bad. Some are necessary for your growth. People will disappoint you, betray you, or fall short of your expectations, and sometimes the best thing you can do is to walk away. Not all people are meant to stay in your life forever, especially if they bring more harm than good. Recognizing when to let go of a toxic friendship is not an act of weakness. It is an act of self-love and self-preservation. It's also important to understand that there is a time and a place for everything in our lives, including friendships. There may be people who come into your life at a certain time, and you connect with them deeply, but as time goes on, the relationship may fade. That's not a reflection of how much you meant to each other at the time. It's simply a reflection of life.
Hey, what's up? Welcome to another episode of Expansion Pack. I'm your host, Dan F. Man. Ain't gonna lie, I'm a little upset. I think I lost my other microphone, my little mic over here. Oh man, that's because I forget to take it off when I be leaving off the show. I be walking around with it on. But anyway, this is DGTA TV. Alright, let's get into the motivation for today. But before we do that, we was looking at a little bit of studies that they was doing. Let me just read the title. I'll read the title. Today we exploring some remedies. So we was looking at some stuff yesterday. On yesterday's episode, we're gonna kind of carry that over into Mental Health Thursday or Healthy Mental Thursday. And first we're gonna get our motivation and then we'll go into that. So let's get it popping. Motivation to love. Motivation to love.
As an owner of Walton Goggins goggle glasses, I know how to make slick-looking goggle/glasses, but I have no idea how to make slick.
I think that you should know someone well enough so that you know if you can negotiate with them, and so that you have started to formulate a vision of your joint future that you can both look forward to with enthusiasm and confidence. And of course, that's going to depend to some degree on your level of maturity, but that means you've considered such things as, do you have a sufficient number of joint interests, and are you oriented in the same direction with regards to how you're going to handle your joint careers and the possibility of children and the manner in which you're going to interact with your in-laws. And you have to start considering your life together from the perspective of practicality and economics, I would say. So it can't just be that massive erotic attraction that's associated with love. Although I think that's extraordinarily important, and you're unbelievably fortunate if you have that, and you should do everything you can to maintain it, and that takes effort. That takes real effort and will. But you need to ally that with maturity and intelligence, and the maturity and intelligence is, okay, we're going to put our lives together. What's that going to look like at the level of detail? How are we going to handle our finances? Where are we going to live? What are our joint plans going to be?
Right.
If you want to set up a household with someone, then there's a lot of things that you need to get straight, and you either do that by bringing your unconscious assumptions to bear on the situation and perhaps clashing where they don't match, or you sit down like a conscious and aware and articulate couple and start to negotiate what your joint responsibilities are going to be. And so that would be, well, who's responsible for the meals and when, and what are you going to eat, and who's going to get groceries, and who's going to pay the bills, and who's going to do which part of what household chores there are to do, and how is that going to be laid out fair. And so you should get to know the person that you're with well enough so that you can start discussing the real practical issues of life and determine whether or not you're capable of negotiating that. Unless you've really made a commitment to someone, like a lifetime commitment, and that's a serious commitment, one that you're not going to back out of. You're not going to take the relationship with the seriousness that's necessary to make it of the highest possible quality and sustainability across the course of your life. And it's really important that it is of that high quality and sustainability, because the relationship, especially when it starts to produce children, is a machine, let's say, a machine that you jointly operate that adds immensely to the quality of your life and the depth of your life.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir, he is. This is the motivation, boy. We try to get that motivation in, you know.
I mean, you have the rope and strand of your life, and your partner has the strands and the rope of his or her life, and then those are tied together to make a stronger rope, and then that unites you across time, and then you undertake massive adventures together. And some of that is the establishment of a household, and the establishment of joint careers, and the maintenance of each other's mental and physical health, and the maintenance of a high quality sexual life, and all of that. Very, very challenging to do all of that. And then the joint production and care of children, which don't be thinking that you can't organize your life when you have children. The thing about modern people is that they're terrified of children. And it's because they regard children as if they're miniature tyrants. They can be, of course, because anyone will tyrannize over you if you allow them to. Perhaps not anyone, but virtually anyone. Why not regulate your children's behavior? I wrote a chapter in my new book called Don't Let Your Children Do Anything That Makes You Dislike Them. And that's like really serious advice. It's like if you allow your children to conduct themselves around you in a manner that makes you dislike them, if you're paying attention to the shadow side of yourself that can be aggressive and destructive, then having children is going to mess up your life. But you don't have to do that. You actually have a tremendous amount of control over the quality of your relationship with your children, and also the manner in which you choose to disperse your time. And I mean, don't be afraid of children, man. You're the adult, for God's sake. You've got the upper hand, and if you have a partner you can rely on, well then, you can both decide how it is that you're going to run your household so that you're actually thrilled to death that you have kids and that you have a life. Well, so I have a good marriage, thank God for that, and that's partly due to the outstanding moral quality of my wife, who I'm also extraordinarily attracted to. We've built a life together, and we've had kids together, and we're happy with our kids, and we had plenty of struggle with our kids because one of our children, my daughter, had serious health problems, which she seems to have managed to resolve, partly as a consequence of her own brilliance. But we've set ourselves up now so that our children are respectable and mature young adults, so thank God for that. And they've got partners who we both really like, and they're gonna have children, and well, hooray, that means that this next part of my life is going to be something that I can advance into with a fair bit of hope. The shackled together is more like it's such a, I may have even said that, but it's such a cynical way of looking at it. It's more like what you've produced is an unbreakable bond between two beings, and that makes both of them better
yes,
in every way if it's based. It's more like what you've produced is an unbreakable bond between two beings, and that makes both of them better in every way if it's a relationship that's based on trust and genuine communication. That's a very difficult thing to attain, because you have to be willing to tell the truth, and the truth is generally a horrible thing. I mean, it's easy to tell truth when everyone wants to hear what you have to say, but it's very difficult to tell the truth when no one wants to hear it, least of all yourself. You're not coming clean about old lies, generally, if that will ruin lives. And I don't think you forgive yourself precisely and focus on living truthfully in the future. You focus on living truthfully in the future, and perhaps you don't forgive yourself exactly. That doesn't mean you pound yourself into the ground with guilt. But if you have done things in the past that were reprehensible and that would destroy lives if were brought to light, then you should, I think that generally speaking, you should do everything you can to limit the spread of damage as you attempt to move truthfully into the future. You should get to know someone long enough to know that you two can tell the truth with each other, communicate, and negotiate, because the most important part of a relationship is the fact that you can tell each other the truth and negotiate.
Hey, listen. Every Thursday, look, this is what we're going to do from now on. Every Thursday, when we do our motivation, it's going to be motivation for love. It ain't going to just be motivation. It's going to be motivation for love. All right, let's keep on going, y'all. So this first thing that I'm going to type in is going to be pretty good. It's going to get your attention. So let's go. Clinical trials for I think that's how you spell it. Hold on. 11. All right, let's go.
These experiences are often called ineffable, but as a scientist, I do my best to F it up by trying to describe it as much as I can, so I'll go ahead and do that. Our society has been in a mental health crisis, and it's been stagnating. A large portion of people treated with traditional antidepressants don't see benefit. Psychedelics are the only drug class that I know of where you have not just one or two, but lots of stories of people saying they took this thing one time and they say it had this profound impact on the course of their entire life. They really exploded on the scene in the 1960s and were associated with some really radical changes to society that really scared a lot of people. I think now society is more ready to kind of accept these compounds and the whole picture of them. I'm Matt Johnson. I'm a professor of psychiatry at Johns Hopkins. I study drugs, principally psychedelics. It's hard to imagine a more interdisciplinary topic in the realm of drugs than psychedelics. They've apparently been used for time immemorial throughout many different cultures on the planet. Kary Mullis won the Nobel Prize inventing PCR, which revolutionized biology. He said he wouldn't have been able to do that had he not had experience in taking psychedelics.
What?
You move and able to do that had he not had experience in PCR, which revolutionized biology. He said he wouldn't have been able to do that had he not had experience in taking psychedelics. You move into the arts and then, I mean, gosh, I mean, who hasn't heard of musicians and other artists claiming that psychedelics had a profound impact on their creativity? There's the Beatles before LSD, and then there's the Beatles after LSD. That's a big shift.
Yes, okay.
The initial big wave of that scientific interest for psychedelics was in the 1950s. So this was about a decade after Albert Hofmann had first discovered the psychoactive properties of LSD. There was a group in Maryland called the Spring Grove Group, a lot of early research there, particularly with cancer patients. But I would say one of the most important groups in the history of this work was led by Abram Halfer and Humphrey Osmond in Saskatchewan, Canada. They were really the first group that I would say developed what we now call psychedelic therapy. There was this growing appreciation of some of the risks and the safeguards needed to minimize those risks, but not every investigator was aware of this. There was some unethical research, some wild research. There was controversy surrounding Timothy Leary, especially after he was fired from Harvard.
Turn on, tune in, and drop out.
Psychedelics became so associated with the counterculture.
Right.
Society was,
Hey, I ain't gonna lie to you, I'm scared of that.
in a sense, traumatized.
See, there you go.
It all came to a halt. I mean, there were researchers that were running sessions and got the notices they just had to stop. The rug is pulled out for decades before there's a reinitiation. The research that's happening now, a lot of it is exploring medical applications. These are all drugs that can have a profound effect on one's sense of reality, including one's sense of self. I think kind of the only bet you can make is that if you have the dose high enough, something really interesting is going to happen. You might find yourself in your mind's eye, soaring in the heavens, the secrets of the universe seemingly revealed to you. On the other hand, 5 seconds later, it might collapse into what folks call a bad trip, where one could feel like they're gonna die. It's sort of this like massive shakeup in one's experience of reality. I'm floored when people with really substantial life experience will say things like, this was the most meaningful experience of their life. Compared to the intensity of the subjective effects, it's remarkable how little impact these substances have on physiology. You know, your heart rate, your blood pressure, everything has its risk, to be clear. But compared to other drug classes, psychedelics are really robustly safe at the physiological level. My therapeutic research with psychedelics has primarily used psilocybin, which is the
That's how
agent
you
in
spell
magic
it.
mushrooms. The dose
Psilocybin.
we now give to patients is anywhere from 30 milligrams to 40 milligrams, which Terence McKenna, who's the famous psychedelic bard, would refer to repeatedly as the heroic dose. If a microdose is over here and a recreational dose is over here, we're way over here. When someone comes in for the day of their psychedelic session, they've already spent several hours with us on previous days preparing for the experience, developing that rapport. We know that all drugs are in part shaped by the context in which they're given, but for the psychedelic substances, that's particularly more so. So when you provide it in more of a warm, welcoming situation, you tend to get more meaningful reactions to the substance. When the experience unfolds, the person is going to lay down, wear eye shades, and...
Yeah, man, LSD can take you to a whole different world, yeah.
Headphones through which music is played.
I can imagine, man. So let me pause right here now that I read that comment just for 2 seconds. So my take on it all is, look around. You like it here? Stay away from psilocybin and all of the THCs and the alcohols that give you bended knees. You don't like it here, take your little sip, shot, sniff, whatever you gonna do. Pop a pill, psilocybin, THC, DHC, AAC. Wait till you meet the DEA, the FBI, the CI. All right, see. If you don't like it here, take this stuff. If you do, just kind of live your life and stay away from it. All right, back to the show.
So the idea is kind of get out of your normal, everyday, discursive, analyzing intellect. And meaningful reactions to the substance. When the experience unfolds, the person is going to lay down, wear eye shades, and headphones through which music is played. So the idea is kind of get out of your normal, everyday, discursive, analyzing intellect. We really just encourage them to trust, let go, and be open. Trust the overall process. Going into this type of treatment is not easy at all. Trust yourself that you're robust. You're going to get through this experience. Let go. What does let go mean? Let go means whatever your preconceived notions of what this experience might be or what experience you should have, don't let that get in the way for the experience that you will have.
Yes, sir.
Don't try to control it.
Yes, sir.
And be open. No matter where this takes you, go there.
Yes, sir.
Whatever the experience is, take the orientation of, this is what I need to deal with. The range of experiences are just so broad. You can swing from a terrifying experience to this beatific, sort of like most amazing experience of your life. Some people could feel like they've reached the end of reality, this kind of plane of existence. Others say that they can feel the suffering across the entire planet, sort of having this sort of experience of universal empathy. It's all welcome. The laughter, the tears, everything in between. That's exactly what this process is for. So the integration phase is where we're discussing the experience with them. And the themes that come up are so varied. One of the aspects you could call revealed truth. And I call these duh moments. These are experiences where people will feel like they've learned something at such a fundamental level.
Right.
I think of examples in our work we've done with cancer patients where, oftentimes people will say, I'm allowing this to create my own suffering. The cancer hasn't killed me yet. I can still live life, but I'm letting it do this to me. They knew it up here. They could tell you the words, but now they feel it in their bones. They feel it in their heart.
Yes, sir.
People are reminded about this power they have to choose their own destiny. Some people come out of these sessions as participants and say that, 1 6-hour experience with psilocybin is like 1,000 hours of therapy. But one of the pitfalls of this clinical work is that you'd be hard-pressed to find a more intimate and vulnerable psychological intervention for a person. That's just a situation that is ripe for abuses if we don't have the right safeguards. Because of that vulnerability, because of that, the incredible gravity of these sessions, we need to even more tenaciously cling to clinical boundaries. We need to limit the use of therapeutic touch. A subtler form of abuse is just filling in the blanks for people. I call it the guru complex.
Right. Yes, please.
People
help.
often confront big picture questions. What is the meaning of life? Does God exist? What's the big picture of everything that's going on? What am I? On those
So what happens after you no longer go to therapy? Right, and that's what he's talking about right now at this point.
metaphysical questions, we really have to be silent. In the biggest picture, aside from psychedelics' ability to treat one disorder or another, I think they're just poised to really help us to understand the nature of psychiatric disorders. What commonalities do they have with each other that are somehow being addressed by psychedelic treatment? I kind of think of all of these disorders as different forms of addiction. So whether it's to a substance like tobacco or alcohol, cocaine, or a way of thinking about yourself, it's this narrowed mental and behavioral repertoire. Reality used to be like this, and now your reality is like this. And psychedelics, when done well, in the right setting, had the ability to just blow people out of that narrowed story. It holds a lot of promise in helping us figure out what it takes for the human being to be mentally healthy.
Yes, sir.
Get smarter, faster with.
So if you want to drop in the chat, fill in the chat, tell me what you think. I don't know what necessarily, I don't think he answered it too well or at all about what would necessarily happen once you leave therapy. I ain't got no answers on that. But we're going to move on here. Let's try another one. Let's go.
Neuroscientist Stacy Gruber has been running clinical trials following cannabis use for a range of conditions.
How's the anxiety? In all honesty, how is it?
Today, Gruber's meeting with Aaron, a graduate student enrolled in a study testing CBD as a potential treatment for reducing anxiety. CBD is one of the main components found in cannabis, but unlike THC, CBD is not psychoactive and not known to be intoxicating.
I started not getting full panic attacks, but like little baby, like half.
Aaron was once outgoing and even performed on stage. But in high school, Aaron was once outgoing and even performed on stage. But in high school, panic attacks became unmanageable.
A panic attack is essentially your fight or flight system going out of control.
They are a completely unexpected tidal wave of events.
My heart's beating, I'm hot and dizzy and nauseous.
They can't breathe, they're sweating. You often hear about people who go to the emergency room.
We would get these phone calls night and day. Her mind just raced. Is she gonna fall down? Is she gonna faint? Like, was she gonna die?
So imagine this multiple times a week, sometimes multiple times a day. I think you would do almost anything to try to prevent that from happening.
Then Aaron began taking a cannabis extract high in CBD during a part of the study where both patients and clinicians know which treatment is being administered, known as the open label phase.
This is the very first clinical trial that looks at a whole plant full spectrum product, which means it has everything from the plant, we haven't pulled anything out, and for Aaron, and for the majority of our patients, at least in the open label phase of this study, we saw very dramatic improvements in their symptoms of anxiety relatively quickly.
It was striking, it was profound.
She like, man,
And it
it's
was
cool.
within-
She like, it's cool, dog. Ain't none of that gonna happen. I got it.
2 weeks of her starting the clinical study. This is a whole new kid. Someone who was very reticent to go off on her own, to walk down the street on her own, or to go try something new, was all of a sudden sending pictures of places she was exploring and feeling just better.
Until all the data are analyzed from a double-blinded clinical trial, Gruber can't rule out a placebo effect. And more research is needed to see how patients respond after long-term use of CBD. But Erin sees a profound difference.
I have reached for my CBD in the middle of an active panic attack. And as someone who normally would have reached for a benzo and knows that feeling, I can say that the CBD didn't take it away as much as a benzodiazepine, but I definitely felt relief. And I can't tell you the last time I had a panic attack, to be totally honest.
All right, y'all, let's take this a little bit deeper. Here we go. This is the real truth.
I switched from due dates to due dates, and it made me go from weeks behind to weeks ahead of my deadlines. You see, I used to...
The word shaman is a mispronunciation by early explorers of the original word sama, not salmon as the most literally was. Originating from the Manchu Tungus, sama combines two words, sa meaning knowing and ma meaning strong or powerful. The term sama, salmon, shaman, would be best translated as strong knowing or strong knowledge. Professor Roger Walsh describes that word salmon means one who is excited, moved, raised. He then explains in his books that the word shamans has been widely adopted by anthropologists to refer to a specific group of healers in diverse cultures who have sometimes been called medicine men, witch doctors, wizards, magicians, seers, etc. But also he states that these terms are far too vague. A Russian-Chinese anthropologist, Sergei Mikhailovich Shirokogorov, was one of the earliest explorers of Tungus peoples, and he stated that the term shaman refers to people, women or men, who mastered spirits and used their power over the spirits in their own interest, particularly helping others. Another popular anthropologist and writer, Michael Harner, states that a shaman is a man or a woman who enters an altered state of consciousness at will, and this is to contact and utilize an ordinary hidden reality in order to acquire knowledge, acquire power, and to try to help other person. The shaman has at least one, usually more spirits in his personal service. He then makes a point that shamans are different to medicine men, for example, by the use of state of consciousness and by use of ecstasy. If we stop just at this point of the definition, we are going to really limit the essence of who shamans are, because you don't have to be a shaman to access the altered state of consciousness at will, and others will also have a connection to a helping spirit, and others also can achieve ecstatic trance. I guess what's important to follow from Michael Harner's definition is that shamans are certainly specialists in those areas, meaning we can all access the spirit's world, but shamans are just more skilled and trained in doing so. Sandra Ingerman highlights in her exploration of the shaman's role access to esoteric knowledge and need for extraordinary spiritual abilities. She also sees shamans as becoming an intermediary between the human and the spirit world. She says that shaman is the one who sees in the dark, or the one who knows. She defines them as the inspired visionary, and they can be a man or a woman who learn through practice how to enter into the world of hidden things. She also describes shamans as one who may help to restore power and focus to a person who has experienced trauma. Shamans may extract spiritual blockages from the body. They can manifest as a physical or emotional illness. A shaman may engage in healing work at various levels, according to Sandra Ingerman, and these would be physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. Some would also be able to restore and reweave the fabric of a person's damaged soul through practices such as soul retrievals. When I think about shamans in the old days, I see wisdom keepers of traditional laws and oral histories. I believe that many shamans of today are the actual wisdom excavators, because a lot of that wisdom has been lost. So I think one of the main tasks for shamans today is to remember again what's been passed onto their DNA, and remember what stories need to be retold, and what songs must be sung again. It's like they need to retrieve the forgotten wisdom of their ancestors. They also have an important role of teaching and showing people how to have their own direct experience with nature and spirits. In other words, it's like they are the enablers for people to remember their own ways of their own ancestors. Today, shamans are admirers and protectors of nature and our sacred Gaia. And I think they always have been, but I feel like this is highlighted in their role today in the modern world. They must be living examples of how to become loving and caring for Earth humans. I also refer to shamans as not just the bridge between the humans and the spirits, but a reliable and responsible bridge. And it's a bridge also between the natural and the supernatural world, between the spirituality and the science. And the more I think about it, the more I see shamans today as well as an anchor for people, so they can really feel their roots again. And these roots are something that brings people back into knowing what's really important and what really matters. I would also like to expand the definitions that we discussed earlier, that were focusing on shamans as those who are able to control spirits and voluntarily alternate consciousness and also get into a trance to heal, for example. I would like the modern shamans to be defined as people who contribute to the society by reminding the rest of brothers and sisters how to be connected to all living beings, how to honor ancestors and their wisdom, how to respect the worlds of spirits, and how to be of service to others. And by others, I don't mean just humans, I mean all living beings on Earth. And yes, whether they are storytellers, healers, fortune tellers, visionaries, whether they help the dead souls to cross, whether they nurture others with food and plants, hold ceremonies, rituals, whether they are able to dream new realities, they are experts in gaining information, wisdom, and knowledge from spiritual realms. Shamans are people who can easily connect the visible and the invisible, the spiritual and the physical, but also the science and the intuitive. I see shamans as those who can intertwine the opposites and the extremes into the harmony. sometimes I talk to people about who are shamans, and I often describe them as people who walk the edge, always in between, and their main task is to help to bring balance and harmony. As I said, they are the bridge between our worlds, but yet they play important role in restoring the balance, not just in nature, but also in the human soul and in the human heart and in the body. They are also these mediators between us and spirits. And I think above all, they should be trustworthy, well-grounded anchors for people and communities. So finally, I think they are not special, they are just specialized in all of the above. I hope that you've enjoyed this video, and I would like to invite you as well into the discussion of what is the role of shaman, especially in the modern world.
So let's take it a little bit deeper. So now you know what a shaman is, or someone who the ancients would go to, or our ancestors would go to get knowledge from the unseen world. All right, so let's go. Psychoactive chemicals in the body. Let's see. Let's see what's already in here. Six minutes. Oh no. Sales. We see it. I might keep dying. Just hold on. Ah, there we go.
Hallucinogens are generally broken up into three groups: psychedelics, dissociatives, and deliriants. Psychedelics have long been the most popular, while dissociatives are used to a lesser extent, and deliriants are rarely taken. The psychedelic group includes drugs like LSD, psilocin, and DMT. Dissociatives include ketamine, PCP, and dextromethorphan, and among the deliriants are atropine, scopolamine, and diphenhydramine. Each of these classes has a clear set of effects and mechanism of action in the brain, though there are some drugs that blur the lines, such as ibogaine, salvinorin A, and DMT. Before we begin, it's worth noting psychedelic can be used to describe individual experiences coming from substances not usually included in the psychedelic class. For the purpose of this video, I am not including drugs like MDMA and cannabis in the psychedelic group, even though they can provide psychedelic-like experiences, and I'm focusing on the psychological effects rather than the physical safety of these drugs, which will be discussed elsewhere on the Drug Classroom. I will briefly discuss the pharmacological differences between these classes and then jump into the effects. Psychedelics function by binding to serotonin receptors and activating them. This makes them 5-HT receptor agonists. There are a number of 5-HT receptors which may be affected.
Sorry, my mic keep dying. This is the information I want y'all to hear right here. Even though it's going to sound all technical, just listen.
To serotonin receptors and activating effects. Briefly discuss the pharmacological differences between these classes and then jump into the effects. Psychedelics function by binding to serotonin receptors and activating them. This makes them 5-HT receptor agonists. There are a number of 5-HT receptors which may be affected by psychedelics, but the most important appears to be the 5-HT2A receptor. All of the psychedelics we usually think about are affecting this receptor. Upon agonizing those serotonin receptors, different psychedelics may trigger different responses from the neurons. Dissociatives function by blocking, also known as antagonizing, NMDA receptors. This significantly reduces the activity that would normally occur through these receptors, which can have a range of effects on pain, memory, perception, and general cognitive function. Deliriants are also antagonists, but they function at different receptors. They specifically affect acetylcholine receptors, in particular the muscarinic acetylcholine receptor. With this action, they can be referred to as anticholinergics and antimuscarinics. By binding to those areas, deliriants prevent acetylcholine from carrying out its normal actions. There are also some drugs that break away from this classification. For example, salvinorin A, a primary drug in Salvia divinorum, and ibogaine are agonists at the kappa opioid receptor. Those drugs provide psychedelic and dissociative effects, yet they are functioning differently from the usual psychedelic or dissociative. Getting into the effects, psychedelics, dissociatives, and deliriants produce notably different experiences, and I will give a brief overview of them to show how they differ. Psychedelics tend to provide a sort of collaborative experience between you and your environment. They change, sometimes radically, your visual and auditory senses. At times, they may cross these senses, resulting in synesthesia, where the input of one sense produces a response in another. The visual changes, for example, can leave your environment warped, such that surfaces change shape, colors are intensified, tracers are created by any bit of motion, and everything around you is breathing or melting. By no means does that encompass the full range of visual effects, of course. The point here is that you can still move and often operate normally in the world at common doses, but the world and your psychological response to it is greatly altered. On top of changing your perception, psychedelics create far stronger emotional responses to everything you see, hear, or think. Because of all these changes and your psychological response to them, psychedelics may be hard to handle, but they can also be very insightful and helpful for creative endeavors. Dissociatives are distinct from psychedelics. Instead of primarily altering your perception, they disconnect you from your environment and may even replace your reality with something new. Both depersonalization, a disconnection from your identity, and derealization, the feeling that the world or parts of it aren't real, can occur. Depending on the dose, dissociatives can disconnect you from your environment, your body, and from your identity. There are not as many complex external visual effects, but they can make your vision blurry, alter your depth perception, and begin to break apart your visual field, resulting in splicing and disconnections throughout your vision. Distinguishing between your body and environment can become difficult, making it feel as though the boundaries of your body have expanded. As the experience progresses, a sort of out-of-body experience can take hold, replacing your internal and external surroundings with a new reality. You may experience complex visual hallucinations, new environments, entities, and even seemingly independent worlds and plot lines. This experience can be very introspective, but you may also feel disconnected from what's going on and even from your thoughts. Negative experiences are possible, yet your emotional involvement with them often is not as great as it would be with psychedelics. They are generally considered easier to handle overall, though the experiences can still be psychologically difficult. Dissociatives are much more likely to produce a full separation between your point of consciousness and your identity. This can also happen on psychedelics, but it is not nearly as common. When this separation occurs, you are left witnessing the dissociative's perceptual effects while no longer being attached to your normal self. Coming out of the experience, memory impairment is more common, and dissociative experiences are frequently described as dreamlike. Before moving on, it should be noted there are similarities between full dissociative states and the peak experiences provided by drugs like DMT, 5-MeO-DMT, and Salvia divinorum. All of those may be considered psychedelics, but their peak effects have many dissociative qualities, with users being detached from the environment, their bodies, and even themselves. Deliriants are, in my opinion, the most interesting group of hallucinogens. They are primarily known for their ability to create experiences that include true hallucinations, which the user does not realize are drug-induced. It is possible to have a full conversation with an entirely non-existent person, smoke a cigarette that does not exist, and see spiders or insects which have no basis in reality. At any given time, the reality you are seeing could include things that don't really exist, or it may be lacking things that really are there, such as cars or doors. This is very rare on psychedelics, And while somewhat more common on dissociatives, it is still not a key part of the experience like it is with deliriants. The ongoing visual effects are either minimal or impairing, such as blurred vision, altered depth perception, and an inability to focus. Feeling separate from other people is frequently reported. For example, you may have trouble speaking and therefore feel separate, or you may think you are speaking perfectly fine when you actually aren't, which also results in feeling separate. The majority of experiences are partially or entirely negative, which is not the case with psychedelics or dissociatives. Your response to everything that's taking place can also be entirely abnormal, such as being totally unfazed by someone disappearing into thin air. Essentially, you may end up in your own reality that's overlaying the real world. During this time, you could be unaware or partially unaware that you've taken a drug. Severe memory impairment and cognitive dysfunction is common, such that recognizing a family member or carrying out simple tasks could be impossible. Your ability to even be conscious of what you are doing is also impaired, allowing you to walk around, talk to people, or engage in dangerous behaviors without really being present or having a memory of what you've done. This combination of effects makes deliriance almost entirely negative, though some neutral or even insightful experiences have taken place. It is worth noting that deliriant experiences are effectively periods of psychosis, which can sometimes become violent and dangerous. Users may become combative when someone, like a doctor, friend, or police officer, is trying to help them. Being this disconnected from reality and your actions means taking a deliriant without a sitter cannot reasonably be viewed as safe, and even the existence of a sitter does not eliminate many of the potential issues. If you have any questions about psychedelics, dissociatives, or deliriants, feel free to leave them in the comment section.
Now, that was interesting. Very, 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 very interesting. We're going to revisit this topic next week. Or again as well, because I think it's something that we need to be able to talk about in the form of saying, hey, is it something that you do? Is it something that you don't do? Is it something that you want to do? Is it something that you don't want to do? And it gives us a more healthy outlook on the world when we can say that it's not just taboo. All right, y'all. This has been another episode of Expansion Pack. I hope y'all got something out of this today and not just high. Yeah. All right, y'all. We up out of here. This is DGTA TV. Peace.
I knew I was underwater. I just didn't realize I was this underwater.
So now you know about your bag of marbles, or your light board, or whatever analogy you want to make work for you. Every time that you're living a scenario, wanted or unwanted, connect those dots just a little bit. And the most wonderful part about all of this is that when you've decided that you want to feel good and you've taken the time to focus on easy existing matches that do feel good, and then you see things that match those easy, in other words, don't take some drama. I know so-and-so is going to be there, and that's never good, but I'm going to fix it. No, you're not. You're not going to fix it. You've already activated it. You've already activated it. We suggest you just don't go. But if you have to go, because martyrdom is real, if you have to go out of responsibility rather than being called to it, if you're assigned to it, if you've got to go because they're expecting you to go, then drink something strong.
Yeah, hey, you good? I'm in there now.
Try to diffuse your focus as best you can, and don't look them in the eye. In other words, decide that you're going to take charge of what you're emitting, and the better job you do of either not thinking about that person ever, which is hard when they gave birth to you, and they're still holding that against you.
Yeah.
you'll develop some skills that work for you. And what you'll begin to notice is that you can accomplish in every situation, especially after you play with this for a little while, scenarios that win-win. You focus upon the best of those that you know are going to be there. And by the best of them, we mean the parts of them that make you feel the best. The parts of them that are the easiest for you to focus on that feel good. So that's your point of attraction. And what you're going to begin to notice is that the best of those around you, not just the humans, but the beasts too. Not just the specifics, but the general too. The traffic, the world in general. You're going to discover that the law of attraction is responding to your self-interest. We're just asking you to make your self-interest be. And this is the clarifying piece. Your self-interest matches the self-interest of your inner being. Now here's why.
Yes, ma'am.
You were source energy before you came into this body. And then you thought part of that consciousness into this physical body, and splat, here you are. But the larger part of you remains non-physical. And even though the larger part of you, humans call it soul or source, that larger part of you is aware of all of the pieces of your life experience, all of the rooms, all of the vibrational fields that you walk into. Your inner being walks in there too. And your inner being has a bag of marbles about you and about everything else that's in that room. So when what's active in you matches what's active in your inner being, oh, your power of influence is so lovely. You're a lover, and you're clear-minded. You have clarity and balance and good timing. That's who you are. So what we are encouraging you to think about is, before you walk into any human experience, align with the bag of marbles that your inner being's got going on about those people, because your inner being only knows their positive aspects and has only thought about their positive aspects for so long that you are not ever going to dissuade or persuade your inner being to join you. Esther says, Abraham, I think you need more information about that person.
Right.
Because she knows that when she's got a tug of war going on with us, she's not going to feel good. And so it occurred to her years ago, maybe she could get us to stop tugging toward the nice part of everything. If you just join me in my logical hatred for that person, then I wouldn't have to feel bad. But over all these decades, she's come to know we're not coming to the dark side. In other words, we know who they really are. We know what they really want. That's where we're focused. And so we're not asking you to take on the responsibility for all of them. You know, you want them to change because if they were nice, it would be easier for you. But you don't get to decide what anybody else's point of view is.
Right.
You don't even get to understand why anybody else has their point of view. You don't know what they lived when they were little or when they were bigger or even yesterday. You don't know why they are active in the way that they are. You only know why you are active in the way that you are. And so if you'll stop living the conditional life that says, clean up these conditions, make these laws, make these rules, get these people to obey, get these people to behave in ways that when I focus upon them, I can naturally feel good. You got to give that up.
Right.
For two reasons, equally important. One reason is you got to give it up because you got to give it up because you can't do anything about it, because you can't change anybody else's point of attraction, because it's not your business to change anybody's point of attraction. And you've been standing on your head in so many different ways trying to get them, trying to cajole them into being happy in this moment or understanding what you mean in this moment or like you in this moment. And what we're suggesting is that you just understand that they are a mixed bag. And you focus upon what you're focused upon and let the law of attraction do the sorting of it out.
Great.
That's good.
The new Go